The dust devil that tore through redemption. Texas on that scorching July morning in 1879 should have been the first warning. But Cole Dalton had never been one to listen to superstition, especially not when the woman standing in the general store had eyes the color of storm clouds and a face that made his heart forget how to beat properly. Her name was Rosemary Hayes, and she had arrived in town 3 weeks prior on the afternoon stage, carrying nothing but a worn carpetbag and a reputation that preceded her like thunder before lightning. The whispers started before her boots even touched the dusty Main Street. Bad luck, they said. Cursed, they claimed. Every town she had lived in had suffered some calamity. A fire in San Antonio that took half the merchant district, a drought in El Paso that lasted 2 brutal years, a bank robbery in Abilene where 3 men died and her employer had been one of them. Cole first saw her when he came into town to sell his cattle. He had been working his ranch alone for the past year since his father passed, 200 acres of stubborn land that yielded just enough to keep him going. He was 24 years old, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and hands that bore the calluses of honest work. His dark hair needed cutting, and his jaw needed shaving, but when he walked into Patterson's general store that morning to buy supplies, none of that mattered because Rosemary was standing at the counter trying to buy flour with the few coins she had left. "I am sorry, Miss Hayes," Old Man Patterson was saying, his voice carrying that particular tone of regret mixed with fear. "I cannot extend you credit, not after what folks have been saying." "What folks have been saying is superstitious nonsense," Rosemary replied, and her voice had a steadiness to it that Cole admired immediately. She could not have been more than 22, with dark auburn hair pulled back in a simple bun and a dress that had seen better days. "I need work, and I need supplies to survive until I find it. I will pay you back every cent." "It is not about trust, miss. It is about the other customers. They have made it clear they do not want to shop here if I help you." Patterson looked genuinely sorry, but his fear was stronger than his compassion. Cole found himself walking forward before his mind caught up with his feet. "Put her supplies on my account," he heard himself say, "and add whatever else she needs." 3 heads turned to stare at him. Patterson looked horrified. Rosemary looked surprised and wary. Mrs. Henderson, who had been pretending not to listen while examining fabric bolts, looked scandalized. "Mr. Dalton, I do not think that is wise," Patterson began, but Cole cut him off. "I did not ask for your opinion on wisdom. I asked you to put her supplies on my account." He turned to Rosemary and touched the brim of his hat. "Forgive me for being forward, miss, but no one should go hungry in this town while the rest of us have plenty." Her storm-gray eyes searched his face for a long moment, looking for mockery or ulterior motives. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she gave him a small nod. "I will pay you back as soon as I am able." "No rush," Cole said, and felt his heartbeat quicken when she almost smiled. Mrs. Henderson made a noise of disgust and swept out of the store, and Cole knew that by sunset, the whole town would know that Cole Dalton had helped the cursed woman. He found he did not care much at all. Over the next week, Cole made excuses to come into town more often than necessary. He learned that Rosemary was living in a tiny room above the seamstress shop, that she was trying desperately to find work, but no one would hire her, and that she had more pride than sense when it came to accepting help. She had come west after her parents died of fever 2 years ago, trying to make her own way in the world. The curse rumors had started after the San Antonio fire, and they had followed her like a shadow ever since. "You believe in curses?" She asked him one evening when he found her sitting on the steps of the church, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Cole settled himself on the step below her, close enough to catch the faint scent of lavender soap. "I believe in bad luck and bad timing. I believe that sometimes terrible things happen and people need someone to blame. I do not believe that a woman with kind eyes and a good heart can bring down misfortune just by existing." "You do not know that I have a good heart," Rosemary said, but there was something almost hopeful in her voice. "I am a decent judge of character," Cole replied, "and I have never seen you be anything but decent to folks, even when they have been cruel to you." She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "The fire in San Antonio started because a lantern tipped over in the building where I worked. I had been working late and I was one of the last to leave. Some people said I must have knocked it over, but I did not. I swear I did not." "I believe you," Cole said simply. "The drought in El Paso was just weather, but I happened to arrive right when it started. And the bank robbery in Abilene, I was walking past the bank when it happened. The robbers shot Mr. Garrett and I tried to help him, but he died anyway. There was so much blood on my dress." Her voice had gone quiet and distant. "People remember seeing me there, they remember the blood. And they started putting together this pattern that does not truly exist." Cole turned to look at her properly. "You have been carrying this alone for a long time. There has been no one else to carry it with," she said, and the loneliness in those words made something in his chest ache. "You are not alone anymore," he told her, and meant it with every fiber of his being. That Sunday, Reverend Matthews gave a sermon about casting stones and judging others, and Cole noticed that he looked directly at several members of the congregation when he spoke about Christian charity. After the service, Cole waited outside and walked with Rosemary back toward town. "People are staring," she murmured. "Let them stare," Cole said. "I was wondering if you might come out to my ranch for supper sometime. I am not much of a cook, but I make a decent stew and the company would be welcome." Rosemary stopped walking and turned to face him. "Mr. Dalton, you do not owe me anything. You have already been kinder to me than anyone has been in 2 years. You do not need to risk your reputation further by associating with me." "Cole," he said. "My name is Cole and I would like you to use it, and I am not asking you to supper out of obligation. I am asking because I find myself thinking about you far more than is probably proper, and I would very much like to spend more time in your company." Her cheeks flushed pink, and this time she did smile, a real genuine smile that transformed her entire face. "Rosemary," she said. "If we are using first names, and yes, I would like that very much." The following Tuesday, Cole drove his wagon into town and collected Rosemary for the ride out to his ranch. The journey took nearly an hour, and they filled the time with conversation that flowed as easy as water. She told him about growing up in Georgia before the war had torn everything apart, about her mother's garden and her father's bookshop. He told her about learning to rope cattle from his father, about the year the fever took his mother and his younger sister, about the loneliness of working land that felt too big for one person. The ranch house was simple but well-maintained, with a wide porch and a view of rolling hills that stretched toward the horizon. Rosemary stood in the doorway and looked around at the sturdy furniture, the clean floors, the kitchen that showed signs of recent use. "You keep a good home," she said. "I do my best," Cole replied. "Though I will admit that curtains and such have never been my strong suit, the place could use a woman's touch." He had not meant it as anything more than an observation, but Rosemary gave him a look that was half amusement and half something deeper. "Are you asking me to decorate, Cole Dalton?" "I am asking you to feel welcome here," he said honestly. "For supper or for anything else." They ate stew and fresh bread, and afterward they sat on the porch as the sun set and painted the world in colors that seemed too beautiful to be real. Cole found himself telling her things he had never told anyone, about his dreams of expanding the ranch, about wanting a family someday, about the fear that he would end up alone on this land with nothing but cattle for company. "You will not end up alone," Rosemary said softly. "You are too good a man for that. Come work for me," Cole said suddenly, the idea forming even as he spoke it. "I need help around the ranch, someone to help with the chickens and the garden, to help with the accounts and the household work. I can pay you a fair wage and provide room and board. It would give you a place to stay away from town and the gossiping tongues." Rosemary looked at him carefully. "That would cause even more talk, Cole. A single woman living on a bachelor's ranch. Then we will make sure everything is proper and above board," Cole said. "You can have the spare bedroom, and we will make sure to have someone from town visit regularly as a chaperone if needed. I will not have you living in that tiny room and going hungry when I have space and resources to share." She was quiet for so long that he thought she would refuse. Then she said, "I will work harder than any hand you have ever hired. I will earn my keep and then some." "I have no doubt about that," Cole said, and felt something warm and bright unfold in his chest. Rosemary moved to the ranch the following week, and if the townspeople talked, Cole made sure he was not around to hear it. She proved to be as hardworking as she had promised, rising before dawn to gather eggs and tend the vegetable garden she immediately began expanding. She could ride a horse better than he expected, and she was not afraid of the hard work that ranch life demanded. In the evenings, they would sit together and go over the ranch accounts, and Cole found himself constantly amazed by her quick mind and her head for numbers. "You could have been a bookkeeper in a big city," he told her one night. "I tried that," she said with a wry smile. "That was the job in San Antonio before the fire." August melted into September, and Cole found himself falling deeper in love with every passing day. It was in the small moments. The way Rosemary hummed while she worked, the sound of her laughter when he told a particularly bad joke, the sight of her standing in the garden with dirt on her hands and satisfaction on her face. She fit into his life like she had always been meant to be there, and the ranch house that had felt too empty now felt like a home. He knew she felt something too, could see it in the way her eyes followed him when she thought he was not looking, in the way her hand would linger when she passed him a cup of coffee, in the way she smiled just for him. But there was still a wall between them, built from her fear that the curse would somehow hurt him too. The wall came down on a Friday evening in late September when a thunderstorm rolled across the plains with a fury that shook the walls. They had been working to secure the barn when the rain started, and by the time they made it back to the house, they were both soaked to the skin. Rosemary was laughing, actually laughing, as water dripped from her hair and her dress clung to her frame. "I cannot remember the last time I got caught in rain like that," she said, trying to wring out her skirt. Cole grabbed a blanket and draped it around her shoulders, and suddenly they were standing very close, close enough that he could see the water droplets on her eyelashes, close enough to see the exact moment her laughter faded into something else. "Rosemary," he said, and her name felt like a prayer. "I need you to know something. These past 2 months with you here have been the best of my life. You make everything brighter and better, and I do not want to go back to the way things were before. I am in love with you. I think I have been since the moment I saw you in that general store, refusing to back down even when the world was against you." Her breath caught, and he saw hope and fear war in her expression. "Cole, you do not understand. Everyone I care about, something bad happens. What if the curse is real? What if something terrible happens to you because of me? Then we will face it together," Cole said, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. "I would rather have 1 day with you and face 100 curses than live a long, safe life without you. You are not cursed, Rosemary. You are strong and brave and beautiful, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you deserve to be loved." Tears spilled down her cheeks, mixing with the rainwater. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have been so afraid to say it, so afraid to even feel it, but I do. I love you so much it terrifies me." He kissed her then, soft and gentle at first, then deeper as she melted against him. She tasted like rain and hope and home, and Cole knew with absolute certainty that this was what he had been waiting for his entire life. When they finally broke apart, Rosemary was smiling through her tears. "What do we do now? Now I ask you properly," Cole said, taking both of her hands in his. "Rosemary Hayes, will you marry me? Will you let me love you for the rest of our days and build a life together on this land?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They decided to marry quickly, before anyone could try to talk them out of it or before Rosemary's fears could convince her she was making a mistake. Cole went into town the next morning and spoke with Reverend Matthews, who agreed to perform the ceremony that very Sunday after the regular service. The news spread through Redemption like wildfire. Cole stopped by the general store to buy a ring, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, which his father had given him before he died. Patterson tried to talk him out of it, warning him about the curse and reminding him of all the terrible things that had supposedly followed Rosemary. Cole listened politely and then bought the ring anyway. He ran into Sheriff Clayton on his way back to the wagon. The older man had known Cole since he was a boy, had been friends with his father. "Son, are you sure about this?" Clayton asked, his weathered face creased with concern. "People are worried. They think something bad will happen. People are afraid of what they do not understand," Cole replied. "Rosemary is a good woman who has had terrible luck. That does not make her cursed. It makes her someone who deserves kindness and a chance at happiness. I am going to marry her on Sunday, and I would appreciate having friends there to support us." Clayton studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Your father was a good judge of character, and I reckon you are too. If you say she is a good woman, then I believe you. I will be there on Sunday." That small act of support meant more than Cole could express. He shook the sheriff's hand and headed home, where Rosemary was waiting on the porch. She looked worried, and he realized she had been afraid he would change his mind once he was back among the townspeople. "Sunday," he said, holding up the ring, "if you still want me." Her smile was brighter than the sun. "I will always want you." They spent the next 2 days preparing. Rosemary had nothing appropriate to wear for a wedding, so Cole drove her into town to the seamstress shop. Mrs. Delacroix was a widow from New Orleans who had always been kind, and when Rosemary explained what she needed, the older woman's eyes went soft. "I have just the thing," she said, disappearing into the back room. She returned with a dress of soft ivory cotton, simple but beautiful, with lace at the collar and cuffs. "I made this for my daughter, but she moved to San Francisco before she could wear it. I would be honored if you would have it." "I cannot possibly accept such a gift," Rosemary protested, but Mrs. Delacroix waved her off. "That young man of yours came to my aid last winter when my roof was leaking and I had no money to fix it. He spent 3 days up there in the cold, would not take a cent. This is my way of repaying that kindness. Besides," she added with a conspiratorial smile, "I think it is romantic. A man who will stand against the whole town for love is a man worth marrying." Rosemary tried the dress on, and it fit as if it had been made for her. When she emerged from the fitting room, Cole forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful, absolutely radiant, and he could not wait for Sunday to make her his wife. The day before the wedding, dark clouds rolled in from the west. By evening, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows and sending tumbleweeds skittering across the yard. Rosemary stood at the window, watching the storm approach, and Cole could see the fear creeping back into her eyes. "It is just weather," he said gently, coming to stand behind her. "What if it is not?" she whispered. "What if something terrible happens tomorrow? What if the church burns down, or there is a flood, or someone gets hurt?" Cole turned her to face him. "Then we will deal with it together." "But Rosemary, you have to stop believing that you have the power to control the weather and the fates. Bad things happen in this world, and they happen to good people and bad people alike. That has nothing to do with you." "I am afraid," she admitted. "I know," he said, pulling her close. "But I am not. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Tomorrow I get to marry the woman I love, and nothing, not weather or gossip or superstition, is going to change that." She held onto him tightly, and they stood together as the storm broke outside, rain hammering against the roof and lightning splitting the sky. And when the storm passed and the stars came out, Rosemary finally seemed to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. Sunday dawned clear and bright, the storm having washed the world clean. Cole put on his best suit, the black one he had worn to his father's funeral, and rode into town with his heart pounding against his ribs. Rosemary had stayed the night before with Mrs. Delacroix in town, as was proper, and he had not seen her since Saturday afternoon. He missed her with an intensity that surprised him. The church was mostly empty when he arrived. Sheriff Clayton was there, as promised, standing near the front with his hat in his hands. Mrs. Delacroix sat in the second row, dressed in her Sunday best. A few other townspeople had trickled in, people who had known Cole's father or who were simply curious. The rest of the pews sat empty, a clear statement from the town about what they thought of this union. Cole did not care. He stood at the front of the church with Reverend Matthews and waited for his bride. When Rosemary appeared in the doorway with Mrs. Delacroix at her side, Cole felt his throat tighten with emotion. She was breathtaking in the ivory dress, her auburn hair pinned up with a few loose curls framing her face. She carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, and her hands were shaking slightly, but her eyes were steady as they found his. She walked down the aisle toward him, and Cole felt like the luckiest man who ever lived. When she reached him, he took her hand and squeezed it gently. "You are beautiful," he whispered. "You are not so bad yourself," she whispered back, and he could see her beginning to relax. Reverend Matthews began the ceremony, his voice filling the small church. Cole barely heard the words, too focused on Rosemary, on the way she was looking at him like he had hung the moon, on the fact that in a few minutes she would be his wife. "Do you, Cole Dalton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Cole said, his voice strong and sure. "And do you, Rosemary Hayes, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Rosemary's voice was steady when she answered. "I do." Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Reverend Matthews smiled and said, "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Cole cupped Rosemary's face in his hands and kissed her softly, sealing the promise they had just made. When they broke apart, she was crying again, but these were tears of joy, and Cole felt his own eyes sting with emotion. They turned to face the small gathering, and Sheriff Clayton started clapping. Mrs. Delacroix joined in, and then a few others, until the little church was filled with the sound of applause. It was not the grand celebration that some weddings received, but it was enough. It was more than enough. They signed the marriage certificate in Reverend Matthews's office, with Clayton and Mrs. Delacroix serving as witnesses. As they were preparing to leave, the church door burst open and old man Patterson hurried in, red-faced and out of breath. "Wait," he gasped. "I wanted to apologize. To both of you. I let fear make me unkind, and that was wrong. Mrs. Patterson sent me to tell you that we would be honored if you would come by the store tomorrow. We would like to give you a proper wedding gift." Rosemary looked stunned, and Cole shook the older man's hand. "We appreciate that, Mr. Patterson, truly." As they walked out of the church into the bright afternoon sun, more townspeople had gathered. Some still looked disapproving, but others offered tentative smiles and congratulations. It was not acceptance, not yet, but it was a start. Cole helped Rosemary into the wagon, and they began the journey back to the ranch, to their home. She leaned against his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her, holding the reins with his other hand. "Mrs. Dalton," he said, testing out the name. "I like the sound of that," she replied, smiling up at him. They spent their first night as husband and wife in the ranch house that was now truly theirs. Cole carried her over the threshold, making her laugh, and they stood together in the main room, suddenly shy with each other despite the fact that they had been living together for months. "I want you to know," Cole said softly, taking both her hands, "that there is no rush for anything. We have the rest of our lives together. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever you are ready, that is when we will truly become husband and wife in every sense." Rosemary looked at him with such love that it nearly undid him. "I am ready now," she said. "I have been waiting my whole life for someone to love me the way you do. I do not want to wait anymore." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and she responded with equal fervor. They made their way to the bedroom, and Cole spent the night showing his wife exactly how much he loved her, how cherished she was, how he would spend every day for the rest of his life making sure she never doubted her worth. In the early hours of the morning, as they lay tangled together in the sheets, Rosemary traced patterns on his chest and said, "I cannot believe this is real, that I am actually happy." "You deserve to be happy," Cole murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You deserve everything good this world has to offer, and I am going to spend my life making sure you get it." The weeks that followed were the happiest either of them had ever known. They fell into an easy rhythm of work and life together, their partnership strengthening with each passing day. Rosemary continued to tend the garden and the chickens, and she proved to have a remarkable talent for managing the ranch accounts. Cole focused on the cattle and the land, and together they began making plans to expand the operation. The town slowly came around. It started with Mrs. Delacroix, who visited regularly and spread the word that Rosemary was a lovely young woman and that Cole seemed happier than she had ever seen him. Patterson kept his word about the wedding gift, a beautiful set of dishes that Rosemary treasured. Sheriff Clayton made a point of tipping his hat to them whenever they came to town, and his approval carried weight. The real turning point came in late October when a fire broke out at the schoolhouse in the middle of the night. Cole and Rosemary were among the first to arrive, roused by the sound of the church bell ringing the alarm. Rosemary did not hesitate, running toward the building even as others held back. "Is anyone inside?" she shouted, and when someone called out that the teacher lived in rooms at the back, Rosemary grabbed a bucket of water and soaked her shawl before wrapping it around her head. "Rosemary, no," Cole shouted, but she was already moving. He followed her in, his heart in his throat, and together they found Miss Sarah Chen, the young teacher, overcome by smoke and unable to get out. They dragged her to safety just as the roof began to collapse, and the three of them tumbled out onto the ground, coughing and gasping for air. The town turned out in force to fight the fire, and by dawn they had managed to save part of the structure. Miss Chen was shaken but alive, and she clung to Rosemary's hand as the doctor checked her over. "You saved my life," she kept saying. "You and Mr. Dalton saved my life." Word spread quickly about what Rosemary had done, how she had run toward danger instead of away from it, how she had risked her own life to save another. The curse rumors began to seem foolish in light of such bravery. If she was truly cursed, people reasoned, would she not have let the teacher die? Would she have risked herself like that? At church the following Sunday, the pews were fuller than they had been in months, and when Cole and Rosemary walked in together, people actually smiled at them. Reverend Matthews gave a sermon about courage and love, and doing the right thing even when it was difficult, and afterward, several families came up to introduce themselves properly and invite the Daltons to supper. "It is strange," Rosemary said on the ride home. "I have spent 2 years being blamed for fires, and now a fire has finally made people see me differently." "They see you for who you truly are," Cole said. "Someone brave and good and worth knowing." By Christmas, they were fully integrated into the community. They hosted a dinner for several neighboring families, and Rosemary's cooking and warm hospitality won over even the most skeptical guests. The ranch was thriving. The cattle were healthy, and plans were underway to build an addition onto the house come spring. On Christmas Eve, as they sat together by the fire, Cole pulled Rosemary into his lap and held her close. "This has been the best year of my life," he said. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, for believing that we could have this." "Thank you for seeing past the rumors," Rosemary replied, resting her head against his chest. "For giving me a home and a family and a reason to believe in happiness again. I love you more than words can express." "I love you too," Cole said, "now and always." They made love by the firelight, slow and tender, and afterward Rosemary fell asleep in his arms. Cole lay awake for a while, listening to her breathe, marveling at how one decision in a general store had changed the entire trajectory of his life. He had known from the moment he saw her that she was special, and every day since had only confirmed that initial instinct. Spring brought new life to the ranch. The addition to the house was completed, giving them a larger bedroom and a spare room for guests or, perhaps someday, children. The cattle herd had grown, and Cole hired on a young cowhand named Tommy Bridger to help with the work. Rosemary's garden flourished, and she began selling vegetables and preserves in town, earning her own money and the respect of the other women. In May, Rosemary began feeling unwell in the mornings. At first she thought it was something she ate, but when the sickness persisted for a week, Cole insisted she see the doctor. Dr. Morrison examined her and then smiled broadly. "Congratulations, Mrs. Dalton. You are going to have a baby. I would say you are about 2 months along, which means you can expect the child around late November or early December." Rosemary sat in stunned silence for a moment, and then tears began streaming down her face. "A baby," she whispered. "We are going to have a baby." Cole felt like his heart might burst with joy. He took her hands and kissed them over and over. "A baby," he repeated, grinning like a fool. "We are going to be parents." The news spread through town and the well-wishes poured in. Women who had been standoffish before now offered advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Mrs. Delacroix insisted on making the baby's christening gown. Even old man Patterson got misty-eyed when they told him. Remembering his own children when they were small, the pregnancy was not easy. Rosemary was sick for the first 4 months, barely able to keep food down, and Cole worried constantly. But she was strong and determined, and by the time summer arrived in full force, she was feeling better. Her belly grew round, and Cole loved to rest his hand there and feel the baby kick. "Strong like his mama," Cole would say, and Rosemary would laugh and correct him. Or her, she would say. "It might be a girl. Boy or girl, as long as you are both healthy, I will be the happiest man alive," Cole replied. In September, they made the trip into town for supplies, and Rosemary insisted on stopping by the school to visit Miss Chen, who had become a good friend. The teacher was thrilled to see Rosemary's growing belly, and immediately began planning lessons she could teach the child when he or she was old enough. As they were leaving, a commotion broke out near the bank. A man on horseback came tearing down the main street, firing his gun in the air and screaming incoherently. People scattered, diving for cover, and Cole immediately pushed Rosemary behind him. "Stay down," he ordered, but the rider had already spotted them. The man was clearly drunk or deranged, his eyes wild and unfocused. He swung his gun toward them, and Cole felt time slow down. He was preparing to throw himself in front of Rosemary when Sheriff Clayton appeared from the side, tackling the man off his horse. The gun went off, the bullet going wild and embedding itself in the wall of the general store. Clayton wrestled the man to the ground and disarmed him, and several other men rushed over to help. The drunk was dragged off to the jail, still shouting nonsense, and Clayton turned to check on Cole and Rosemary. "You folks all right?" he asked, breathing hard. "We are fine, thanks to you," Cole said, his arm still protectively around Rosemary. She was pale and shaking, one hand pressed to her belly. "Let us get you home," Cole said softly, and she nodded. That night, lying in bed, Rosemary cried for the first time since the wedding. "I was so scared," she admitted. "Not for me, but for the baby. What if something had happened? What if the curse is real and something happens to our child because of me?" "Stop," Cole said firmly, gathering her close. "That drunk had nothing to do with you. He had too much whiskey and lost his mind. It could have happened whether we were there or not. You cannot keep blaming yourself for random acts of violence or accidents or bad luck. The world is chaotic and unpredictable, and that is not your fault." "But what if something happens to the baby?" she whispered. "Then we will face it together," Cole said, just as he had said so many times before. "But I believe with everything in me that our child will be healthy and strong. I believe that our family will be blessed, not cursed, and I need you to believe it too." Rosemary took a shaky breath and nodded. "I will try. That is all I ask," Cole said, and held her until she fell asleep. November arrived with cooler weather and the anticipation of the baby's arrival. Rosemary was huge now, uncomfortable and eager to meet their child. Cole had arranged for Dr. Morrison to be on call, and Mrs. Delacroix had agreed to come stay at the ranch when the time came to help with the delivery. On a cold morning in late November, Rosemary woke Cole before dawn with a hand on his shoulder. "It is time," she said, her voice tight with pain. Cole leaped out of bed and immediately began preparing. He sent Tommy into town to fetch the doctor and Mrs. Delacroix while he stayed with Rosemary, helping her through the contractions and trying not to panic. She was so strong, even in pain, gripping his hand and breathing through each wave. Mrs. Delacroix arrived first, bustling in with bags of supplies and a calm confidence that immediately put them both at ease. "I have delivered more babies than I can count," she assured them. "This little one will be just fine." Dr. Morrison arrived an hour later and the real work began. Cole stayed by Rosemary's side the entire time, ignoring the doctor's suggestion that he wait outside. He was not going to leave his wife, not for anything. The labor lasted through the day and into the evening. Rosemary was exhausted, drenched in sweat and crying from the pain, but she kept pushing. Cole talked to her constantly, telling her how strong she was, how much he loved her, how proud he was of her. Finally, as the sun was setting and painting the room in golden light, a baby's cry filled the air. Dr. Morrison held up a squalling, red-faced infant and announced, "It is a boy, a healthy baby boy." Cole felt tears streaming down his face as the doctor cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket. Mrs. Delacroix placed the infant in Rosemary's arms, and Cole sat beside them on the bed, staring in wonder at the tiny person they had created. "He is perfect," Rosemary whispered, touching the baby's tiny fingers, counting his toes. "He is absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Cole asked, unable to take his eyes off his son. Rosemary looked up at him, her face exhausted but radiant. "I was thinking James, after your father, James Henry Dalton." Cole's throat tightened with emotion. "James Henry," he repeated. "That is perfect. Pa would have been so proud." They spent that first night as a family of three, marveling at every little sound James made, at the way his tiny hand would grip their fingers, at the miracle of his existence. Cole had never felt love like this, fierce and protective and all-consuming. The next morning, friends and neighbors began arriving with gifts and congratulations. Miss Chen brought books for when James was older. Patterson and his wife brought a beautiful wooden cradle that Patterson had made himself. Sheriff Clayton came by with a carved wooden horse, grinning at the sight of the baby. "He is going to be a heartbreaker," Clayton predicted. "Got his mother's good looks, and his father's stubbornness," Rosemary added with a laugh. Over the following weeks and months, they settled into the rhythm of parenthood. James was a good baby, healthy and strong, rarely fussy. Rosemary recovered quickly from the birth, and soon she was back to her usual activities, though now with a baby strapped to her back in a sling that Mrs. Delacroix had made. Cole watched his wife with their son and fell in love with her all over again. She was a natural mother, patient and gentle but firm when needed. She sang lullabies in the evening, soft melodies her own mother had sung to her, and James would fall asleep to the sound of her voice. The ranch continued to prosper. By the spring of 1881, they had doubled the size of their herd and hired 2 more hands to help with the work. Rosemary's garden and preserves business had grown so successful that she was supplying half the town. They had money in the bank, a thriving home, and a beautiful son who was starting to pull himself up and would soon be walking. On their second wedding anniversary, Cole took Rosemary into town for a proper dinner at the new restaurant that had opened. They left James with Mrs. Delacroix, who was thrilled to babysit, and enjoyed an evening that was just the two of them. "Do you ever think about that first day in the general store?" Cole asked as they shared a slice of apple pie. "All the time," Rosemary admitted. "I think about how scared I was, how alone I felt, and then you stepped forward and changed everything. You gave me hope when I had none left." "You gave me purpose," Cole replied. A reason to look forward instead of just surviving day to day. You and James are everything to me. I cannot imagine my life without you. I love you, Rosemary said, reaching across the table to take his hand. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. They walked home under the stars, hand in hand, talking about their plans for the future. Cole wanted to build a new barn. Rosemary wanted to expand the house again to make room for more children. They dreamed together of a big family, of growing old on the land they loved, of watching their children and grandchildren carry on the legacy they were building. The following year brought a second pregnancy, and in the spring of 1882 they welcomed a daughter into the world. They named her Sarah Rose, after Miss Chen and Rosemary's mother. Sarah was a tiny, delicate thing with her mother's auburn hair and her father's dark eyes, and James was immediately smitten with his baby sister. Life was full and busy with two small children, but Cole and Rosemary had never been happier. The ranch hands adored the children and often could be found teaching James to rope fence posts or making Sarah laugh with silly faces. The house was always full of noise and laughter and love. In 1884, they had a third child, another boy they named Thomas after Cole's grandfather. Tommy, as they called him, was loud and rambunctious from the day he was born, keeping everyone on their toes. The house felt completely full now, bursting with life and energy. Rosemary stood in the kitchen one afternoon, watching through the window as Cole taught James and Sarah to ride while Tommy napped on a blanket nearby. She felt a deep sense of contentment wash over her. This life, this family, this home, it was everything she had never dared to dream of during those dark years when everyone had believed she was cursed. "What are you thinking about?" Mrs. Delacroix asked. The older woman had become like a mother to Rosemary, stopping by regularly to help with the children and share in their lives. "I am thinking about how blessed I am," Rosemary replied. "How lucky I am that Cole saw past the rumors to the person I really was. How grateful I am for this life we have built together." "You built it together," Mrs. Delacroix corrected gently. "You both worked hard to create this, and you both deserve every bit of happiness you have found." That evening, after the children were in bed, Cole and Rosemary sat on the porch as they often did, watching the sun set over the land that had become their legacy. Cole had his arm around her, and she leaned against him, perfectly content. "Do you remember when you asked me if I believed in curses?" Cole asked suddenly. "I do," Rosemary said. "I think I was wrong," Cole said, and she pulled back to look at him in surprise. "I do not believe you were ever cursed, but I believe we are blessed. I believe that everything that happened, all the hardship and the pain and the loneliness, it was all leading us to each other, and that is not a curse, that is a gift." Rosemary felt tears prick her eyes. "I agree," she whispered. "I am so grateful for you for all of this. For our family and our home and our life together." "I love you, Rosemary Dalton," Cole said. "I will love you until the stars fall from the sky." "I love you too," she replied. "Always and forever." Years continued to pass in a blur of happy chaos. James grew into a responsible young man who took after his father in his love of the land and his skill with cattle. Sarah inherited her mother's business sense and helped manage the ranch accounts and the growing preserve business. Tommy was wild and adventurous, always getting into scrapes but with a heart of gold. In 1889, when James was 10, Sarah was 7, and Tommy was 5. Rosemary found herself pregnant once more. She was older now, and this pregnancy was harder than the others had been, but she was determined to see it through. Cole worried constantly, hovering over her and insisting she rest more than she wanted to. In the late autumn, Rosemary gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Grace. The delivery was difficult, and for a few terrifying hours, Dr. Morrison was not sure if Rosemary would pull through. But she was strong, just as she had always been, and by morning she was holding her daughters and smiling tiredly at her husband. "5 children," Cole said in wonder, looking at their family. "We have 5 children. We are truly blessed," Rosemary agreed. the twins brought new energy to the household. James, Sarah, and Tommy all doted on their baby sisters, fighting over who got to hold them or help feed them. The ranch house, which they had expanded twice more over the years, was now filled with the sounds of children playing and laughing and occasionally arguing. Cole and Rosemary watched their family grow with pride and joy. They had built something remarkable together, not just the successful ranch but a home filled with love and acceptance, where their children could grow up knowing they were cherished and safe. By 1895, Redemption had grown from a small, dusty town into a thriving community. The railroad had come through, bringing new businesses and families. The old prejudices had long since faded, and no one even remembered the rumors about Rosemary being cursed. She was known instead as a successful businesswoman, a devoted mother, and a pillar of the community. She and Cole celebrated their 16th anniversary with a party at the ranch, attended by what seemed like half the town. Their children had planned the whole thing as a surprise, and Cole and Rosemary stood together on the porch, watching their friends and family celebrate, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Look at what we have built," Cole said softly. "Look at the life we have created." "We did this together," Rosemary replied, taking his hand. "Every step of the way, we did it together." James was now a young man of 16, already taller than his father and seriously courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Sarah at 13 was beautiful and smart, with plans to attend business school back east eventually. Tommy at 11 was still getting into mischief, but showed promise as a cattleman. The twins at 6 were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and causing double the trouble. As the years continued, the Dalton family became a fixture in the community. James married his sweetheart Emily in 1899 and built a house on the western edge of the ranch property. When Cole and Rosemary's first grandchild was born in 1900, a boy they named Cole Jr., Rosemary held the tiny infant and cried tears of joy. "Our legacy continues," she said to Cole that night as they lay in bed. "We have built something that will last beyond us." "We have built something beautiful," Cole agreed. "And it all started because I saw a woman in a general store who needed someone to believe in her. And I saw a man who was brave enough to love me despite what everyone else said," Rosemary replied. "You saved me, Cole Dalton." "We saved each other," Cole said, pulling her close. By 1905, Sarah had returned from business school and opened her own shop in town, selling not just preserves but also fine goods ordered from back east. Tommy had taken over the day-to-day running of the ranch, proving himself to be as skilled as his father. The twins were 15, and causing their parents no end of worry with their beauty and the number of young men who came calling. Cole and Rosemary, now in their early 50s, had slowed down a bit but were still active and involved in everything. They spent their mornings working together, their afternoons with their grandchildren, and their evenings on the porch, still watching the sunset just as they had done for over 25 years. "Do you have any regrets?" Rosemary asked one evening. Cole thought about it carefully. "Not a single one," he said finally. "Marrying you that Sunday was the best decision I ever made. Everything good in my life comes from that choice." "I used to be so afraid," Rosemary admitted. "Afraid that loving you would bring disaster, afraid that I would lose you or hurt you somehow. But you taught me that love is stronger than fear, that faith and trust can overcome any obstacle." "You taught me about courage," Cole replied. "About standing up for what is right even when the whole world is against you, about the power of kindness and acceptance." "You made me a better man, Rosemary." She leaned over and kissed him softly. "We made each other better," she said. "That is what love does." As the sun set on another day, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and gold, Cole and Rosemary sat together and counted their blessings. 5 children, all healthy and happy and successful in their own ways. 3 grandchildren with more on the way. A ranch that had prospered beyond their wildest dreams. A community that respected and valued them. a love that had only grown stronger with each passing year. The curse that everyone had whispered about had never materialized. Instead, they had built a life filled with blessings, with joy, with the kind of deep, abiding happiness that comes from choosing to love someone fully and completely every single day. That Sunday in 1879, when Cole had married Rosemary despite the warnings and the fear, he had changed both of their lives forever. He had given her hope and love and a place to belong. She had given him purpose and family and a reason to believe in the power of standing up for what was right. Together, they had proven that love was stronger than superstition, that faith was more powerful than fear, and that two people who believed in each other could build something that would last for generations. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Cole squeezed Rosemary's hand and said what he had said 1,000 times before but would never tire of saying, "I love you." And Rosemary, smiling the smile that was reserved just for him, replied as she always did, "I love you too." Now and always. Their story, which had begun with whispers of curses and endings, had instead become a testament to the transformative power of love, the strength found in standing together against adversity, and the beautiful life that could be built when two people chose each other against all odds. And it was far from over, their legacy continuing in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch they had built together, and in the love that would endure long after they were gone. A reminder that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply choosing to love someone when the world says you should not, and trusting that love to carry you through whatever storms may come.